BDR SDR role is a developmental role. They are learning how to be their experts in this field. So you can't let AI take away those learning opportunities either. So you have to find this balance of where can we enhance our reps' performance, but not sacrifice their learning, their critical thinking, and their problem solving.
Hey everyone, Matt Curl here with Apollo, and welcome to Rewiring Growth, a series where we pull back the curtain on how today's fastest growing startups are going to market in the age of AI. Today, I sat down with Andrew Froning, sales development leader at Cyera, the fastest growing cybersecurity startup. We unpacked how he rebuilt his entire outbound motion from scratch, and we got into everything from choosing consolidation over complexity to why AI can't replace the learning curve of sales development. This show is brought to you by Apollo.io, the end-to-end AI sales platform built to help modern sales teams grow. Now, let's get into it. Hey, Andrew, welcome. Excited to chat with you again.
Yeah, pleasure being here.
I know one of the earliest challenges you had, even before we get into like what's coming next or the future of AI, you had a problem that I've never heard before. No one's ever brought up before, which is something like several hundred. I think 500 is the number I heard quoted of disorganized sequences. So you're taking over the BDR teams, the development teams, you're looking at the outbound messaging. There's like 500 sequences that are all over the place. How do you even get your arms around that and think about how to start unwinding that and getting to a scalable, workable solution? What was that journey like to go through that cleanup? It's not ever, the fun stuff to talk about the cleanup, but it's honestly so rewarding and super valuable. And a lot of the hard lessons I think are learned.
Yeah, it was at a point where the beginning of the BDR org was at this inflection point of what do we want to do with it? So they brought me in to really help build a funnel of talent, a funnel of pipeline generation. And so when I was presented with an issue that a lot of SDR and BDR leaders have when they join that organization around disorganized sequencing, their SEPs all over the place, like I was fortunate enough to just say, you know what? I think at this point in time, instead of putting effort into fixing what's there, let's wipe the slate clean. Like, let's take the environment at right now where it's, hey, this is a new beginning. We're going to start over. And that's where I actually reached out to Apollo to be that clean slate. So instead of putting hours upon hours of trying to make sense of everything that was in previous system, it was just easier to come in and start with a clean, fresh slate.
I think what you did is really bold. It's not even the Apollo thing. I want to talk about that, but less in the context of why Apollo is amazing. Obviously, I think it is. I know you all use it, but it's more like the consolidation. You all are taking a consolidative view. And I think that's what's interesting in the industry is some people are still holding on to the existing tech environment, which is a series of specialized tools that then your admin stitch together. Others are migrating towards centralization. And I'm hearing this. You're the second leader I've talked to even in the last week where they're running the BDR teams and they're really coalescing around this. I want less panes of glass, less windows my reps are looking through. I don't want my BDR to have to be in one thing for dialing and one thing for emailing and one thing for sequencing and one thing for reporting and sort of how that gets out of control. So curious your thoughts there. We'll go to that in a second, but I want to start with first, how did you gain the conviction of start over? So many leaders would just take the existing toolkit and just try to make it work or force it to work or just wade through the muck and try to get to a better outcome. What led to you saying, you know what, I think the right strategy is actually a hard reset here? Like, how did you gain that conviction? What was it in your career that led you to that? What was it that you saw? I would just love to hear about how you landed at that pretty bold decision.
I've been fortunate enough to have been part of two other pretty well-established startups in my past, and had gone through plenty of change management, system changes during that time. And I've seen the value of a well-implemented solution, right? I've also seen how a poorly implemented solution could affect the business. And that's where here in the present, I had a poorly implemented solution. And based on my past experiences, I was very confident that at this point, it was easier to start from scratch. I mean, keep in mind, we were only about 4 BDRs and I would say 30 field reps out in the field. And the majority of the users were coming from the BDRs. So it wasn't anything too drastic where it was a massive org. So when I looked at the number of affected individuals in this change and weighed the amount of time I felt it would take to clean up a poorly implemented solution versus the opportunity to change. It was very clear to me that this was an easy decision to look towards a new solution that we could just start from scratch from. There was also another aspect where the team I was taking over was a little bit low in morale. Their leader just got replaced. Things were being asked of them that they were struggling to keep up with. So I also took it as an opportunity of making something new and exciting as well. Like when you're early into a business, you need that morale high, especially at a fast-paced early stage startup. You can't be having a team just down in the dumps all the time. You have to keep them excited. And that was the other small aspect. I won't say it was the main driver, but it was something to consider as well.
One thing I'm curious about on that journey that you went through, I've seen different types of leaders come in, even in my career. Some will come in and they get passionate about, oh, I need to make a bold decision. I need to make a move on software or technology, which you did. And I think you're saying, it was earlier, maybe 30 on the sales side, 4 in development, but still that's a big change. Many leaders, though, I've observed, especially the ones that end up kind of putting themselves in a worse position, they come in and they're very convicted about a piece of technology or software, and they want to put that one piece in. And the end result of that is not, I think, what you accomplished at Cyera, which I actually want to understand and unpack more. They end up sometimes getting into this world where they put another piece of complexity into the stack, and they made it even slightly messier. I think what you did, which is net different, is you pulled a lot out, but you also built a scalable, sustainable solution that was well structured from the get-go, and you maintained it staying clean. Would love to hear, like, how have you done that? What did it take? Was it leadership conviction? Was it great admins? Just what is the recipe book? What is the Andrew recipe book of how you ended up taking these malformed tools, putting in something different, and then keeping it organized and keeping it in the ability to scale? I think you said 47 even on the BDR stack by itself. That's like literally 10x the number of people you first made that choice. How have you done that? Like, what's the secret of success? What would you impart as wisdom to others that are undergoing something similar?
I have to shout out the communities I'm part of. I mean, being a sales development leader, business development leader is a challenging role. And we oftentimes are also held with the burden of picking these tech stacks. And a lot of eyes are on you when that happens. So I am part of a few communities where I try and be very engaged with them, talking with my peers, what's going on, doing my own research as well, staying abreast of what's going on in the tech world with go-to-market tooling. Who are the up-and-coming players? Why are they seeing success? Like, it's our job. We need to be informed. Just like a good surgeon would be staying up on all the medical papers and research and what new tooling can be used to better perform surgery. We need to be kept aware of like what's going on in our world. And I think that played a large part in where I could be tech agnostic and evaluating what would be the best fit for my business, and also taking into consideration the planned growth we had. Some businesses, like, depending on what the growth looks like, you need different tech stacks. Large enterprise business is going to operate a lot differently than a small mom and pop sales force of 3 or 4 people.
Yeah, I love it. It's all about all the right things, balancing. And I think what you're saying is very true about the leaders of BDR teams. You're really competing on eyeballs and attention, and it's differentiated. I think when I've talked with BDR leaders, I often think back in time about the very first time I ever had I don't know if you've ever gotten one of these, like a BDR email, but they have like the whiteboard with your name on it and they're writing. I remember the very first time I ever got that, it was just incredible. And I think that's where, the ability to compete on differentiation and unique tools and a unique approach in that space is so critical, because if you do the tried and true, it's not innovative, you end up getting, stuck in the past, and then you don't stand out against competitors. And then of course everybody screams about, why aren't there enough SQLs or MQLs? And, where are my appointments? And I think it's so true with the role that you're in. How have you built? It sounds like you're staying abreast of industry trends. You're constantly evaluating what's out there. How do you think about AI's role, the role of centralized tools? How do you see the tech stack evolving for teams like yours? And What are you seeing in terms of how you're thinking about it in your seat today at Cyera?
It's a great time to be talking about that. Real quickly to touch on the part about like keeping up with trends too. I always tell my reps, if you see it on LinkedIn, it's already too late to be using that strategy, right? And you need to be sharp, you need to be creative. And that applies to us and what tooling, what processes we're putting in place. You want to understand kind of trends and what's going on based on the processes your peers are doing and what you're hearing and reading about. But you gotta be creative if you want to stand out and stand apart and really get those MQLs and SQLs. So when I think about AI, like now's the time you have to be leaning into it. But you don't want to be a laggard on this one because at the pace AI accelerates you, and if you're a year behind and back in the early 2000s of tech, you're going to be 10 years behind when you apply AI to all that, right? So you need to be leveraging it now. And we actually have started an AI committee here at Cyera to really understand how we want to fully leverage it across our go-to-market teams. We have also been very fortunate to have been joined by Sol Rashidi, who is our chief strategy officer around AI. She's written some amazing articles and books on that. So we are all in on AI over here. And for me specifically, it's enhancing our BDRs, but it's also a very delicate subject as well because the BDR SDR role is a developmental role. They are learning how to be their experts in this field. So you can't let AI take away those learning opportunities either, right? So you have to find this balance of where can we enhance our reps' performance, but not sacrifice their learning, their critical thinking, and their problem solving. Because that's what's really going to be needed as they advance in their careers. We can't be relying on AI like that. Like you're seeing already a bunch of articles coming out about the atrophy of knowledge because too many individuals are just leaning on AI. So it's this fine balance I'm playing with. And I really want to make what I've been telling people like an army of Tony Starks with their personal Jarvises. You have a brilliant creator, problem solver, creative, right? Thinking outside of the box constantly. But he was supported by something that can help with the efficiencies and all that. So how can I do that in this sales work?
I chatted with Grace Feeney from SmartLink a couple days ago. It was identical to why she was saying she loves developing. She leads the BDR teams and also RevOps, which is super fascinating. But she leads a lot of the BDR teams, and she was talking about how the phone is so important and the phone skills are so important. And she was talking about there is no crutch there. So you have to learn your product. You have to learn to listen to the customer. You can't just regurgitate what's put in front of you. And she talked about the risk, I think a little bit of AI there with, it can make it to where you're not becoming an expert in your field or your product or your customer, but that all of her instinct and everything she sees day in and day out is that being the best of your product, the best of your customer, learning how to adapt and answer questions is actually critical in this role. And very similar to yourself, it's a developmental role where you're learning how to sell and how to engage and how to talk about a value prop and understand a customer needs and qualify. And there's so many critical things there that are difficult. Maybe there is some theoretical BDR where I'm actually talking to you like this, but it's a phantom of AI. And maybe that's the world we're in 5 or 6 years. But that's certainly not today. And there's a tension there that's at play. But very similar thematic, I think, to what you're saying there. When you also talked earlier, you were hitting on, if you've seen it on LinkedIn, it's already too late. I could not agree more. I've privately talked with friends about this. I've also talked about this inside of our company walls occasionally, where they'll ask sometimes, why don't you put some of these cool things that have happened in your past on LinkedIn, or do you thought leadership pieces? And the reflection I have is very similar to what you said. At the time, I could do them years later, but at the time, I would never put that out there because it was like company proprietary secrets. It was what was our secret sauce that was making us outcompete everybody else. So with that in mind, I'm not going to say go give us your company secrets and how you all are scaling and doing so well, Andrew, but I totally agree and appreciate what you're saying there. But with that in mind, how are you thinking about your tech stack in, the next 2, 3, 4 years, especially for this role? You're talking about this developmental role. You need to educate and coach and teach. You want to make sure they actually know your product. You've got real humans in the mix. In there, you've got AI with their personal Jarvises augmenting them. How do you see that tech stack evolving? If you were to go into kind of magic world land and we're having this conversation in 2030 or 4 or 5 years from now, what do you think it looks like even inside of your company or just general market fare? Like, what do you think the tech stack of the future looks like?
I actually foresee, and it's nothing I'm going to undertake, but I'm sure there's someone out there already thinking about this. There's going to be a tool that helps orchestrate all the other tools around AI. I foresee in 5 years, there's going to be a tool that can help bring in all the different tech stacks you have and help consolidate. Because there will always be certain niches and needs, but as we go into this world of AI and the collaboration that that can create, and when you start having multiple AIs interact with each other, right, how are we going to really manage all that? I foresee someone down the road developing a tool, and that would be a massive help. That's my like 5, 6 years down the road kind of answer. In the immediate, it is around limiting that clicking around from screen to screen and just keeping them focused, especially with this new generation. They're so used to having multiple screens and the quick digestion. How can we leverage the tools in a way that gives them ability to work the way they best work and hop around while still maintaining just a central location? And that, when I think about that, I always want to take stock of everything that's going on at each of these tools that they're- all of the vendors I work with are constantly pushing out new product features, new capabilities. There will come a time where maybe one of my vendors is no longer needed because I have another vendor that came out with just as good, or acceptable service, right? And that's going to happen. And I look to consolidate. I think, though, what I'm seeing a lot now with vendors is them going towards these Chrome extensions. I'm seeing a lot of Chrome extensions. And unfortunately, what's happening now is that's slowing down performance as well. So I'd love to also not have to rely on Chrome extensions. And that's something I look at when working with vendors as well, because now, like, you look at any SDR and it's just like a whole nother tab section. You thought we had a tab issue up at the top of Chrome. Now it's along the side too. And they're all competing for your attention, right? So how best can we put how well can the tools work together? And it's going to take a little creativity.
Yeah, maybe last question for you, Andrew. It's tied directly to this, and I like the path you're walking down here. Obviously, in the zeitgeist, everybody has to say they're doing AI, and I see every product on their webpage now, and it's like, oh, here's how we're doing AI. I think at Apollo, we're trying really earnestly to do a lot of things with AI. I know Cyera is as well. You mentioned that earlier in the conversation. What are you seeing, in the market? There's definitely, everyone's talking about AI and people are releasing features. When you look at even just the BDR tech stack, without naming names, you don't have to hurt anyone's feelings. Are there tools that you feel like they have a great story, but it's just not showing up in the product, or they're building things but they're just not useful? How do you think about someone's AI readiness and their ability to adapt as a person that you're going to continue to do business with long term? Is it really as extreme as people are hearing? If maybe you're in Texas or you're internationally, people might be hearing, oh, if you're not doing AI, you're dead. You're not going to go anywhere. No one's going to buy your product. Where do you think the truth is, just from your perspective on, your craft and you as an expert leading BDR teams? How do you feel about when you're evaluating vendors or looking at their software or the technology, they're fit for you long term?
It had, like, when they bring up AI, it really has to be awe-inspiring. Like, oh my gosh, you're able to do that? Because there's no reason a creative, well thought out vendor shouldn't be able to provide something like that. If you're just providing a standard AI solution that, hey, I spend half a day in GPT making one, that's not going to do it for me. Like, I'm relying on my vendors to be their subject matter experts and really get creative and think about how they can be leveraging AI to support their customers. It's not my job to do that. It's theirs. So I really want to see my vendors come to me with some awe-inspiring, like, I never realized that could be done sort of services or capabilities. That's what I look for from AI. Otherwise, it's just a buzzword.
I'm going to pass it through RPMs. Wow or get out. Wow or get out. I like that framework though, Andrew. I think that's all we had time for today and set aside allocate. But hey, thank you so much for talking and sharing some of your thoughts. And I hope this is very valuable to people listening in. And yeah, any parting thoughts or any parting words you have?
Just that it's a friggin' exciting time to be in this role and as SDR sales leaders. Like I even across the business, right? We are seeing a transition with this adoption of AI, and in 10, 20 years, it's going to be scary where we're at, but it's going to be a fun ride. That's how I see it.
I agree. Well, thanks, Andrew, for coming on and chatting with me.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Rewiring Growth. Like Andrew said, AI can do a lot, but it shouldn't take the reps out of the reps. I'll leave you with a challenge. Pick one part of your process to automate and one part where you double down on coaching. That's how you build sellers who last. In the meantime, a huge thank you to Andrew for sharing his insights with us. You can connect with him on LinkedIn or check out what the team at Cyera is building. Otherwise, like and subscribe, and you can always find us at apollo.io. Thank you for joining.